Welcome everyone to our arts training, Making It Beautiful, how to use art and song in your actions. We can go to the next slide and we'll go through some logistics. Hi everyone, I'm Amy, she, her, Senior Climate Finance Strategist at Stand.Earth and Steering Committee member at Stop the Money Pipeline. I'm coming to you tonight from occupied Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho territory in so-called Colorado Springs. And tonight we have an awesome art training as usual. And I will welcome our guest speakers here in just a minute, but just for some logistics this evening, thank you to everyone introducing yourself. In the chat, I see lots of familiar names and lots of new folks. It's good to see everyone here for another one of our awesome art trainings. This recording and a follow-up email will be sent out tomorrow morning. So if you want to share this or you want to keep this or use it again to go back and watch some of the pieces from this, you'll have that opportunity when we send out the recording tomorrow. So we're going to talk about our artists tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about the Blame Wall Street campaign. We're going to do a song teach-in with our very good friend Ale. We're going to talk about how to use using arts in actions to win change. We'll do some resources, some Q&A, and then we'll do some wrap up. And we'll go to the next slide. I'm going to pop it over to the always amazing David Solnit to say hello.
Thank you, Amy. Super excited to be here and at all the Blame Wall Street actions, and all the folks, thank you for taking an hour or so of your evening to listen. What got me drawn towards using art is, as the slide says, that at the end of the day, all we have to make change is our voices, our bodies, and the things we make with our hands. And so I'm excited at all the cross-fertilization and the emergent intelligence at using those things. Like, super excited to have Ollie teaching us a new song, and also hopefully some tips on how to use voice, song, and music. I'll be talking about tips on visual art, and also ways to use some different ways to use all these new posters we have. So very excited to jump in and dig deep on that. And if we want to go to the next slide. Amazing quote from Karita Kent. Thank you for writing it up, Julie. But I love this quote just because as activists and organizers, we know that we can't leave decision-making to politicians or corporate executives. And similarly, we can't leave art and culture. There's definitely a place for people who make that their mission life, but we need a movement and a world in which everybody creates art and culture. So I'm excited about creating a movement to do that, and would encourage people, if you haven't already, to put in one form of art, and broadly speaking, whether it's poetry, gardening, cooking, different types of crafts, as well as visual art, music, writing, all that stuff. So that's it from me. Back to you, Amy.
Thanks, David. So we'll go to the next slide. First, before we jump into how to use the art, and I see some questions going on in the chat on if you haven't ordered yet or when you're getting them, it should be on the way. We're working hard to get everyone's art shipped out to them. And we'll share a whole bunch of really great links at the end during resources and also in the follow-up email. So I am seeing your questions. Just want to make sure folks are feeling heard. So we're going to meet our artists. This is a handful of our artists that are featured in the posters that you have received or will receive. And we'll go to the next slide. We'll meet our first artist. Many of you are familiar with the absolutely amazing Jackie Fawn. Jackie has done so much incredible art for the movement, for Stop the Money Pipeline, and for climate finance campaigning all over the nation. We've seen Jackie's art everywhere, and we're very grateful for this beautiful creativity. And I'm not going to read the slides, but we will share these slides out so you can save these quotes. These are also the artist statements, so they are available for download, and we'll also share that link. On our next slide, we'll meet our second artist, Christy Belcourt, one of my very favorite artists. I have lots of Christy Belcourt art in my office. Christy has also been making art along with these other artists for years for the movement, and her signature art with the Indigenous art is just absolutely stunning. We're very grateful to Christy for providing so much beautiful things for our movement. Next slide. Jan Berger. Jan is in North Carolina and is a lot of you met him on one of our previous webinars we did in our last art mobilization, where we got to talk to the artists. We got to see them in their studios, and also has been creating and providing art for the movement for many years. Next slide. Killjoy Mall, another favorite. If you haven't seen their Instagram, definitely go check that out. We'll share some links out as we go through this training. But again, just so much beauty and so much dedication to providing such powerful art to all of us. Next slide. And then, of course, you already met David this evening. David has been doing art for the movement for very long time and is one of the first people that I ever got to work with on art in the movement. And we're very, very grateful for everything that you do for us, David. Next slide. So the reason we're all here tonight is the Blame Wall Street campaign. So this campaign came about and is a 2-month period of a wave of escalated actions that directly lay the blame for the heat, the fires, the hurricanes at the doors of those responsible, the banks, the insurers, and the investors funding the climate crisis. Next slide. Climate change is not something that is happening just by chance. It's being done to us by a relatively small number of corporate executives who are choosing to continue to profit from the extraction and burning of fossil fuels. We need to call them out, name who is responsible, lay blame at their feet, and hold them accountable. Next slide. So why now? Climate disasters that we have seen all summer and for the last few years have been absolutely devastating. Recently, Hurricane Ian, devastating Puerto Rico and Cuba and now Florida, and the absolutely horrific floods in Pakistan that displaced 33 million people. These are harming frontline communities across the US and the world. And it is absolutely vital that people really connect those dots between these climate disasters, climate change, and the climate crisis, and the corporations responsible for fueling the climate crisis. So we've been targeting all of these folks over the last few weeks, and we'll continue to target these folks all the way through COP. Next slide. If you have not registered your action with us, please definitely we will share the link to register your action on our action network and get that action on the map. Please definitely put that on there so we can help amplify, help coach you through. There's funding available and a ton of resources to make your action impactful. Next slide. So I just wanted to share some of the beautiful actions that have already been happening over the last few weeks. This one was in San Francisco. Activists gate crashed the Chase Corporate Challenge, which was a 3.5-mile running race with over 5,000 participants, including over 400 Chase employees, to deliver the message that fossil fuel funders will be held accountable. Next slide. Another awesome action in New York last Friday. There was not one, not two, but 3 actions. An Indigenous-led action at BlackRock's headquarters, a rally and demonstration outside of TIAA's headquarters, and a disruption of a panel that corporations deforesting the Amazon were hosting. All happened within a few hours of each other. And seeing this action and all 3 actions come in all day on Twitter that day was just stunning. Shout out to our friends in New York. Next slide. Also in Chicago and LA, there were youth climate strike rallies and marches with demands of the California State Pension, Chase, and the Federal Reserve to stop funding fossil fuels. Both of these actions were just absolutely stunning. So much love to our youth in LA for organizing and our friends in Chicago. Next slide. So how to get involved? You can register your action, and I will share the link in the chat, but I will also make sure this gets in the follow-up email. And then you can join an organizing call on Tuesday, October 11th at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern. We'll also share the RSVP link for that. And then you can paste Blame Wall Street art up in your community. And we're going to learn how to do that tonight. I will also share the link to make sure that you can order some art if you haven't received any yet. Next slide. And then we'll share out all of these, as we go, but you can also, I'll pop some of these into the chat here in just a minute when I'm done talking. But we do have an awesome action toolkit. We have an art toolkit. We have action coaching with me and with some of our friends at RAN. Some grants, you can apply for up to $1,000, $1,500 for BIPOC and frontline led organizations. And mobilization and amplification. Our amazing staff at Stop the Money Pipeline will help recruit people to your events. We will promote them. We will send out an email. We will post your action on Stop the Money Pipeline social media. So you can get in touch with that email address there. Also make sure this all gets out to you. Next slide. All right. So this is where I'm going to hand it over to David to talk a little bit about the art toolkit. And then we're going to do some music, which I am very excited for.
Just included the table of contents in the art toolkit, but there's a whole bunch of different resources, both how to use these newspapers, but then also stuff on street muraling, banner making, a bunch of other stuff. So encouragement for folks to go in there and use the resources. And also when you sign up for posters, just a reminder, we'll also start sharing out the photographs of how different people are using them as either paste ups, pop-up art kits, or signs. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you. All right, to our next slide, we are going to begin the music portion of our evening, which I'm very, very excited to introduce to you on the next slide. Our friend Ale from the People's Echo. If we could go to the next slide. Very, very excited to welcome our friend tonight. Seattle-based song leader and activist Alexandra Blakely has created a new song for the campaign, which we're going to listen to in just a minute, and we'll share the link to that as well. So welcome, Ale. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks, Amy. Glad to be here. Hi, everybody. My name is Alexandra Blakely, as was already said, and I also go by Ale for short, which means whale tooth in Hawaiian. I inhabit the lands of nettle and orca and salmon and cedar and devil's club and many more, which is also the territory of the Coast Salish peoples in so-called Seattle, Washington. And I'm arriving here with all my Jewish and Scandinavian and Finnish and English, Irish and Scottish ancestors at my back, all of them. And I bring all of them along with me because I am a commitment to breaking the cycles of intergenerational trauma, both caused and endured by my ancestors. And I'm not whole without all of them. And I'm a descendant of the uprooted and rootless ones. And I'm committed to rerouting and resensitizing my people through culture building and reviving my Indigenous ancestors' cosmologies through remembering what was meant to be forgotten. And one of the ways that I do that is through song. And so again, I'm feeling really honored to be invited here to be with you tonight. I have a background as a backup singer for touring artists and being the front person for bands for about 15 years. But in the past 6 years, I was sitting with the question of how can I use my creative gifts as a tool for change? How can I use my gifts as a political platform for education? And so I kind of transitioned out of that and I started playing benefit concerts for a few years. And although benefit concerts are very effective for change, for our movements, for liberation, I could still feel something inside me shaking their head, like there's something else. And so I started having dreams when I would go to bed at night, and I would wake up in the morning in that liminal space, kind of having like a remembrance of where I just was in the dream. And it was kind of like the vision that I can very viscerally remember is it was people standing in a circle. There was probably 150 people standing in a circle, and just kind of like there was like a slight sway to the circle, and there was some sort of like humming happening. And I would wake up from that and just be like, what is that? I just remember how good I felt in my body waking up from those dreams. And then shortly after that, I started watching this incredible series called Eyes on the Prize. I don't know if some of you have probably seen that. It's on PBS, and it documents the civil rights movement. And one of the things that would reverberate in me days after each episode was the singing and the way it unified the people and the movement in the streets. So with the combination of what was coming through in those dreams and being inspired by the civil rights movement, I started having visions of us singing in the streets together with hundreds of people here in Seattle. And so this new question for me emerged of how can we bring this energy to the streets and not appropriate songs from other movements, which is when I realized, well, I guess we need some new songs. So in 2018, it was the summer of 2018, I co-founded the People's Echo, which is a collective song community for social and climate justice here in Seattle with a desire to share song that's rooted in a vision for a more beautiful world. And so this is how it happened. I called some friends together and I said, hey, we have a city council meeting coming up for a Green New Deal. Does anyone want to co-write a song and sing it together at the meeting? And that's just plainly how it started. It just started out with a few of us. And then less than 6 months later, the month before COVID was declared a pandemic, so we're talking February 2020, we held a 2-day action that involved over 200 people on both days. And day one was shutting down 2nd Avenue in downtown Seattle, right out in front of Chase's Bank's Pacific Northwest corporate headquarters. And I have a video of that particular day that I'm going to have us share here in a moment. But the second day, we actually entered a Chase branch in downtown Seattle, where we held a grief ritual for all that we love, for all that we have lost, for what we're losing, and for what we fear to lose. And we were 200 people packed deep, deep, deep inside this Chase branch. And we built an altar in the center and made offerings in the center to all of which I've just mentioned. And on that day, 28 of us decided to remain in the bank beyond the police's request for everyone to leave. And so for the remainder of that time, the 28 of us stood in a circle around that grief altar and we sang. And one by one, over the next 2 hours, they arrested each of us. And outside of the bank remained the other 150 plus people who were singing to us as each of us were brought out to the buses to head to the King County Jail. And the thing that really most impacted me was when we had our debrief meeting after this action with about 50 plus folks, I was really surprised to learn how much music was mentioned in that meeting. And it seemed to be the main topic of our meeting. Because it was a new element that we had incorporated into our movement in Seattle, into the climate movement in Seattle. And so I was hearing people say things like, I was hearing people say things like, it felt so good, I didn't even need to go to church that Sunday, which was like, wow. Someone else said something like, it created a force field of something that I don't even know how to explain, like all of this in reference to the songs we were singing. Another like 40-year-old climate veteran, like 40 years in the movement, said something like, that was the most heartfelt action that I had ever been to because of the songs, and so on. And so we were getting this feedback, and I felt like we were finally onto something, and then singing quickly became one of the most dangerous acts during the pandemic. and things shut down for a really long time. And that was really hard for a lot of us, feeling like we had found this, like this gem that was bringing so much richness and fullness and unity and beauty and love, the protect what you love through singing together, especially in the face of so much corruption and hatred and vitriol. Song was really is and was in that time too for us, like this really powerful medicine that we felt like we finally had access to. And so I'm excited to share this video from the action that I was mentioning to you, so you can get a little sense of how it felt in the streets. And then I'm going to teach you a song that I caught for the Blame Wall Street campaign. So if we could play that video, I just want to say before we hit play, if you just pay attention, it might feel a little repetitive, but I really invite you to pay attention to the people around us. We're singing in the streets and we're walking down 2nd Avenue that we had occupied the entire block, but pay attention to the people around us and like how they're impacted as the music moves through. So you can go ahead and play. Thank you. Cool. Awesome. Thanks for that. And I appreciate the the comments coming in there. Yep, that's Chokton, Paul Wagner, colonial name. Great. Well, I'm going to teach this song called Return that came through for this particular campaign. And we're going to do it in a way that's called an echo. So I will sing a line and then you'll echo what I sang back to me one of the ways that I do that, especially when we're with a big group of people, is when I'm singing, I'm going to point at myself. And when I want you to sing it back, I'm going to offer my hands out like this. And so I know we won't be able to hear each other. I had to do this for 2 years in the pandemic. It's a little awkward, and especially because we can't see each other right now, right? Because this is a panel and we're not in a meeting and we don't get to see everybody. And so that is like adding an extra layer of awkwardness. But for the sake of learning a new song tonight, let's just pretend that we're all in a room together, and that when I'm singing a line to you and then I offer my hands, see if you can find a little bit of vulnerability and courage in yourself to sing it back, even though we can't hear each other. All right. Okay, so it goes like this. Said money is the gasoline on which these fires burn. You said money is the gasoline. So we're here to shout it out, make Wall Street return. You, so we're here to shout it out. The riches to the soil, the riches to the sea. You, riches to the soil, riches to the sea. The riches to the children, to our communities. You, the riches to the children, to our communities. We're going to sing that whole chunk together. The riches to the soil, the riches to the sea. The riches to the children, to our communities. Back to the echo. Said money is the faucet through which these waters flood. You said money, faucet through which these waters flood me. So we're here to shout it out, make Wall Street refund you. Yes. The riches to the soil, the riches to the sea, the riches to the children, to our communities. That's again, the riches to the soil, the riches to the sea, the riches to the children, to our communities. Back to the verse, and I'm gonna do an echo here, okay? Said money is the pipeline through which these storms rage. You said money is the pipeline through which these storms rage me. So we're here to shout it out, make Wall Street repay you. So we're here to shout it out, Chorus, the riches to the soil, the riches to the sea. Come on. Riches to the children, to our communities. One more time. The riches to the soil, riches to the sea, the riches to the children, to our communities. Riches to the children, the riches to the children, to our communities. One more time, that same part. The riches to the children, to our communities. Yay. Good job, everybody. I'm really grateful for being able to see Solnit and Amy. Thanks, y'all. Yes, thank you. Okay, so now we're gonna play the audio of that song. And Solnit, Amy, and I are gonna sing our hearts out. And you can pretend that you're seeing all your other people singing it with you. So if we could play the audio. Money is the gasoline on which these fires burn. Said money is the gasoline on which these fires burn. So we're here to shout it out, make Wall Street return. So we're here to shout it out, make Wall Street return. Riches to the soil, the riches to the sea, the riches to the children, to our community. The riches to the soil, the riches to the sea,
faucet through which these waters flood. Said money is the faucet through which these waters flood. So we're here to shout it out, make Wall Street refund. So we're here to shout it out, make Wall Street refund. The riches to the soil, the riches to the sea, the riches to the children, to our community. The riches to the soil, the riches to the sea, the riches to the children, to our community. Said money is the pipeline through which these storms rage. Said money is the pipeline through which these storms rage. So we're here to shout it out, make Wall Street repay. So we're here to shout it out, make Wall Street repay. The riches to the soil, the riches to the sea, the riches to the children, to our community. Clap your hands, everybody. The riches to the soil, the riches to the sea, the riches to the children, to our community. One more time. The riches to the soil, the riches to the sea, the riches to the children, to our community. The riches to the children.
Yes. Thank you
Wow.
again, Solnit and Amy.
Wow.
Amazing. Well, I just wanted to share a few last little details about some tips for community song leading. Yeah, if I was an organizer wanting to bring music into an event, and I've never done anything like this before, something I might do is put a call out to my community for folks who are into singing. And yeah, if I have an action coming up, I would probably put a call out to meet before an action and learn some of these songs together. It doesn't have to be everyone who's going to be at the action, but if you do have like 6 or 15 people who do show up, then you have like a handful of people who know the songs or at least more familiar with the songs already, so that when you're at the action, it can help the rest of their crowd grasp the songs sooner. And it also helps sometimes to, like I did, to kind of like sing the song all the way through once so people can hear how the whole thing goes together before you break it down and teach it into chunks. And while you're at an action, some of the ways you can get people's attention, like if you have some of those trash instruments, like the, old mayonnaise buckets, and you can make little, I forget what they're called, but you can make your own instruments. You can use those to get people's attention. You can do the whole, if you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. And then you've got people's attention through the clapping, and then you can start saying, we're going to teach a song. In my experience, and this is again, in my experience, people need invitations to do things with music. So they need invitations to snap. They need invitations to clap. They need invitations to use their body as rhythm, to be invited to dance, to be invited to come in closer, to be invited to sing louder. People always been always responding quite well to these invitations. And you can also let people know similarly when you want people to sing quieter, or to even stop singing, or to like, let's do that one more time. And then, yeah, you can just look for videos by the People's Echo, and some of the folks that I learned a lot from are the Peace Poets and Thrive Choir, which is based out of Oakland. So if you want to look for some of those folks for inspiration on YouTube, that's a great place to look. That's about it for me. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. That was so beautiful and so inspiring. And I can't wait to load that up on my phone and play it through my Bluetooth speaker and get people singing at our next action. That song is incredible. And for everyone watching, I just shared a bunch of links into the chat, and they will also go out in the follow-up email tomorrow. Follow the People's Echo on Facebook. I shared their YouTube channel, the SoundCloud, where you can listen to the song that we just all learned. And then there's also the YouTube video link, which a couple folks were asking for that video that we watched. So all of that will be available later on. Thank you so much for being here with us and singing and teaching us more about why music is so vital to our actions and to this movement. Ale, we are so grateful for you. All right. I feel so, that just made my whole day. All right, well, now we are going to move on to learning about art. If we could jump back in our slide deck, we are going to hand it over to David Solnit. Just wanted to share one more time, my very good friend, longtime mass nonviolent direct action organizer, using arts and culture in organizing and direct action, and currently the coordinator of Climate Justice Arts Project. I'm going to hand it over to David to teach us how to use our posters and what to do with art in our actions.
Thank you, Amy. And thank you, Ali. What a blessing for those songs and for the musicians in our movement. My dream is always, of course, to have the visual art and the music and the theater and dance all in tune with each other. So if we all step up our arts game, we'll get there. Grateful to be here. I just wanted to acknowledge one of the places I've learned a lot about art is working with the Coalition of Immokalee Workers, farm workers in South Central Florida, and just want to take just a couple breaths to think about them as they're dealing with the repercussions of climate chaos right now in Central Florida. You know, there's evacuation centers, so I'm just gonna take 3 breaths. And I'll just say a little bit about this, trying to figure out how to get lots of beautiful art out to different folks. And if these newspapers are pretty amazing because it costs something like 35 cents per copy, so which is, you know, between a nickel and a dime per poster. And so thanks to Stop the Money Pipeline and the supporting groups, we're able to actually like get 5,000 copies of these, which is 25,000 posters out all over the country. So far, we've gotten them out to 400 groups. Shout out to Gemma Searle for leading the shipping. And you know, the folks we're fighting, they have all kinds of ways of using their propaganda media to try and control us. They actually have something called guerrilla marketing, where they can pay tens of thousands of dollars to hire these for-hire firms to paste up posters with their corporate advertising stuff up on rented areas of different cities. You've probably seen them if you live in the city. So this is our people's counter attack, and so grateful for the artists who have the language ways that reach how we understand the world. So we're gonna first talk about wheat pasting, then about making signs, and finally about pop-up art shows. So my favorite, and there's is cornstarch wheat paste. It's non-toxic. You can get it almost anywhere. I think it's very sticky. You can also use different forms of flour. You can buy wallpaper paste, but I'm just gonna walk through this. So cornstarch, my ratio that I like is about a cup and a half to a gallon of boiling water. And so, and I'm gonna ask my friends and family, Nora and Julie, to help me out. If you want to lift that up and tip it down a little bit so I can see. So we've measured out, I'm just doing a half gallon for tonight. So we measured out a half gallon of that, and then actually poured it in a bowl with water and turned it into a slurry.
if you don't do that, as I learned earlier tonight, it will get lumpy. So get a nice slurry, and then you want to stir and all pour in. So if you look at the water, it's boiling right now. I'm trying to do, this is my dream of doing a cooking show. So I'm gonna turn it off so it stops boiling. And then right away, I'm gonna start dribbling the cornstarch in, and you can use a wooden spoon or a stick or anything, but just stir it up real quick so it gets consistent. You want to keep showing what that looks like in there. You can see it thicken. If you're ever wheat pasting in the cold of winter, nothing better than mixing up your wheat paste and going out while it's still hot. So that's good. And then we're just going to let it cool for a while. And if you want to come over here, Nora, I'm just gonna. This is a pretty thick, but it's and I'll actually show wheat pasting with you, but it could be a little bit thinner. It a little bit depends on what your surface is. If your surfaces are rough stucco or cement or porous wood without a lot of paint on it, a little bit thick is nicer. And I'm just gonna show I was going out wheat pasting tonight. I'm gonna show you my kit here, which is nice to have a shopping bag to carry everything in. I've got a bucket with wheat paste, and pretty much anything that you can put your wheat paste in that your brush fits in. I've got a 4-inch simple paintbrush here. I use about $3 or $4, but you can also, if you want to go faster, if you're doing a lot, this is a wallpaper brush. So I've got my bucket and putting in a bag so it's easy to carry, and I'll talk about different places you might wheat paste. There's every level of risk, from zero risk to my friends from the Silicon Valley Climate Action who walked up to Wells Fargo Bank World Headquarters in broad daylight and wheat pasted their front windows. And they're they're all retirees age, and they said security didn't know what to do and just walked away. So I've got a rag so that if I get messy, I can wipe my hands off. And I've also taken my newspaper and I've separated the different posters and stuck them into a simple way. So I can kind of see which the designs are, and I can just pull them out and get them ready. It's ideal to have 2 or 3 people, depending on what you're doing. So I've got my setup here, and you may choose to have one person carry this and one person carry the bucket so that you don't splatter a lot of wheat paste on the unwheat pasted posters. And I'll say a few other things. I mentioned that in the art kit, there's flower recipes and also some suggestions on my favorite wallpaper paste. If you want to wheat paste somewhere where you don't want it to come off with water or to come off in the rain, I've in the past used waterproof or water resistant wood glue, and about half water to half wood glue, and once it dries, it's basically waterproof and very resilient, shiny. If you were doing it on plywood like we do it, we've posted some of these up at a community garden in my area, this would be a good mix for you. Or if you've wheat pasted already, you can seal that. I think I have one, see if I can find it, that we did that with. So this one was done with that glue, and I could pour water on the water would run off, whereas if it was cornstarch, it would start to absorb it. So just different things for folks to consider. And you're willing to hold that up right there. So I'm gonna put my wheat paste down here. We'll paste up the wolf. So I've got my brush with paste in. And one thing that really helps, if you want to push that a tiny bit more towards me, is I'm gonna, sometimes I even hold this up just so I know. Ideally, you cover this area with wheat paste, this whole area. And I'll dip it again. And you can see if I had a bigger brush, I could go a little faster if that was a, and I've consciously left this tape on just because I want to show what it's like to deal with an uneven surface. So then I'm just gonna, and if you had a second person, just one person could be just brush and messy, and one person could be clean and place it. I'm just, and some people like to smooth it out with their hands. I like to use a brush. And I'm trying to get all the bubbles out so that it's got solid contact so that it will both be resilient in the rain. I've got a little bit of lumpiness, so I'm just going to try and get good contact. I'm painting out from the center. And just give it a good coat so you make sure the edges don't peel up when it dries. And I don't want it too wet. It's a little bit dependent on your climate. If you're in, you know, Nevada in the summer, it'll dry instantly. But if you're in somewhere with a little bit more humidity, you might want to get some of the excess paste off so that when you walk away, it'll be dry in an hour. And I think I'll talk about, let's take this one down and I'll do another one. I'm just going to talk about different places folks have wheat pasted. So some folks that I've seen for this have actually not been wanting to take a risk. So they've sometimes taped them up in public places. Other people have gone to graffiti alleys or places where there's already street art graffiti and put them up there. You know, wheat pasting, when I came up as an activist in the 80s, that was how we got the word out. Rock and roll shows, political movements, you know, 100 years ago, circuses all pasted their stuff in public property, in public space, which has largely been privatized. And so, and in some cities, it's not illegal. I once got stopped by the police in Berkeley, near where I'm from, and the cop didn't like that I was wheat pasting, but he said, well, there's nothing illegal about that, but I'll write you up for not having your proper bike lights. I'll pick another one that's up doing that. So thinking about what your level of risk, what's visible, having people keep an eye out. If you're doing it somewhere that's a higher risk, and maybe even if it's a particularly high risk, you might want to have some support folks that you know that you can call if you were to get arrested. Make sure that people who can't risk arrest aren't in places where they could. So folks with warrants, immigration status, or just who aren't in a place where they can easily deal with that. But if you look around your city at what kinds of stuff is up there, that will give you some idea. And there's also sometimes we've done it in broad daylight and just as like officer or security guard or concerned neighbor. This is an art project. This is non-toxic, water soluble, organic cornstarch that will come right off in the rain, or if somebody wants to remove it. It's a long history of free speech, just like Tiananmen Square. So just thinking about other things that we'll talk about next. So that's looking pretty good. You can see a little wrinkle here. And this is an unusually flat surface. I might actually brush that out like that. And you have to repaste it. You don't have a lot of time, but you can lift it and say, okay, I want to clean up that wrinkle. And if you want, you can take a whole wall somewhere and do a whole pattern of them. In San Francisco, around the Chase Bank thing, we actually added on Chase. I can't remember what the slogan was, but we added a little context so you could hand paint something to add. And wheat paste or newsprint is the easiest thing to wheat paste because it's so porous. I think that's about it for wheat pasting. So let's talk about sign making now. We can go to the next slide. If you want to hold it up for a second. So actually go through supplies. And this is the same content that's in the art kit. There's all the things to think about. If we go to the next slide. Thank you, Austin. And one more. Wonderful picture that's sent in this week from Worcester, Massachusetts. So these folks took the posters and they made their action signs. And so I just did this before this. And one simple way is just to take a cardboard box like this one that we just wheat pasted on. It's nice if you can find a big enough surface that's not already folded, but if you can't, and so I just took the cardboard, I laid the poster down on it with a pencil, traced the edge, took a utility knife, cut out the shape right up to the edge. And at this point, you could wheat paste it. You could paper mache it like this. If you're in a place where it rains, you could even give it that coat of waterproof glue. And then I just laid it out and put a piece of masking tape here. And if you wanted to mount it on a stick, you could cut the cardboard out, staple and glue it onto a stick, and then put the poster over so the staples wouldn't be so visible and you had a cleaner image. And then this one was actually folding on this, so I took a little bit of cardboard, and cardboard has a grain. It ran that way and the fold was this way. So this is basically a little reinforcement. I put a little bit of glue, taped around the edges, and so that I won't have a floppy sign, so I didn't have access to giant clean cardboard. So yeah, one of many ways to do this. And we can move to the next slide. And the last thing, this is Allison from Idle No More SF Bay, the heart of our Bay Area climate protection movements. And she just took the posters and she stapled them up on her fence, which is sort of a community bulletin board. And she took the text on the back where it has all the artist statements and stapled it there. But if you see on the slide to the left of her, we also created a bunch of art show flyers that are 8.5 by 11 that you can download, print out, and then put up like a professional art show. And you could encouragement to do it. People have done it in Corvallis. I think they've done it at the farmers market. A lot of people have done it in front of banks. You can just set up an art show with the displays. You could have drinks and cheese, all kinds of things. But you know, it's a nice way to get people to think about it using the art itself and lifting up the artists themselves. Next slide. And this is from Corvallis last Friday. Thank you, Patty. During rush hour, you can see they did a bunch of them, mixed them up with their own signs. Next slide. So I'm just gonna step back from our wonderful poster art and talk more broadly about some of the things I've learned while doing actions. And I love this quote by Ricardo Levins Morales, Minneapolis artist. And if you want, you can set that down. Thank you, Nora. We're done, I think, with our cooking show. But you can read the quote by Ricardo Levins Morales. And I actually do believe the world is made of stories, and wonderful Battle of the Story toolkit. And my partner, Julie Searle, who's a past union organizer in Berkeley Federation of Teachers, she used this with the teachers, and they figured out, okay, here's the story of public school teachers who are underpaid and don't have enough resources to have the schools that kids are worthy of. They figured out what their story is, and then they organized arts to help amplify that story, as well as getting teachers to tell the story themselves. And so I just included this. This is the last day before their contract was voted on at the school board meeting. The school board had to walk across the Sunflower Fair contract now, street mural underneath the 16-foot pencil and to the meeting. And as a result, they got a very good contract, a more livable wage, and a lot of resources for the stuff that kids need to thrive. So encouragement as we are all activists, artists, organizers, to think about what's the story and to have that conversation with your organization, your community, your movement. What's the story we're trying to lift up? And then what are the songs, what are the visual art, the theater, the actions that will do that? Can do next slide, please. Thank you so much. Just using this as an example from a few weeks ago, I sat down with a wonderful coalition in the San Francisco Bay Area that was doing a Stop the Dirty Deal action. And we were thinking, is like, what story do we want to tell? And we really wanted to lift up the fires that were taking place across California and that urgency, particularly as it was focused against Feinstein and Pelosi in their California district. So we sort of talked about the different elements. I did a very fancy sketch, as you can see, stick people, but actually encouragement to think of yourself as an artist, a sculptor. We don't exactly put people here, but to create the art, get buy-in and creative ideas from the movements. And then if you go to the next slide, this is what we ended up doing with. And as we were doing this outside Feinstein's San Francisco offices, there was also 6 young organizers who were doing a sit-in inside and demanding to speak with Feinstein's staff, getting commitments to pass the messages on, not enough commitments that they were eventually arrested. And while they were doing that on the outside, the fact that we were painting the sidewalk with temperate paint, you can see the folks holding that banner up are on 16-foot orchard ladders. That was a little bit rattling them from the outside, but so I guess I'm just showing that a demonstration itself is a form of art. How are we the people organized? That was during a group photo, but we continued the rally and the singing during the group photo. Next slide. Just a couple more things that I always think about is participation is in both creating the art, the music, the theater, the movement. How can we involve different organizations, different people in our community? And those who know me know that street murals has been a favorite. This is one of a whole 2-block street mural done during the youth-led climate strikes. This was in the heart of San Francisco, near Wells Fargo headquarters, designed by Mona Carone, but we literally involved probably 300-400 people in painting the murals. And then this was one of about 20 circles, and different organizations and communities would design each different mural. And then the background is painted with natural clay from the Sierra foothills. This is an aerial shot. So participation, innovation. And one of my big inspirations is Equate, Earthquaker Action Team, who led the successful campaign to stop, help me with the acronym, the bank that was funding mountaintop removal in Appalachia. Somebody put that in, but they had idea that we're not gonna do anything boring, that we're not gonna do any marches or rallies. If there's someone on here, please shout it out. But and so they were constantly innovating new forms of protest. Like when that bank was sponsoring a flower show in Philadelphia, they got in front of the flower show and saying, "Where have all the flowers gone?" They did long marches, coordinated actions, all kinds of stuff. So I think encouragement to us to think, we could do anything. We have our voices, our bodies, and the things we make with our hands. So what can we create as artists, activists, organizers? You could go to the next slide. And I encourage people to take 3 steps back and build different forms of arts into your organizing, into your planning. That it's not, this is how we reach people, how we understand the world, how we build community and movement. It's not icing on the cake or an afterthought. So I actually argue that this should be at the core of our organizing, and those people with those skills of communicating through song, through music, through arts, all of us have some of that and can build up those skills, but those should be leading our movements and at the heart of it. So this is just a little arts organizing plan template so that you can say, okay, we're going to go back in our organization. We're going to figure out, not next week, but in the coming year or years, how are we going to weave this out? How are we going to build skills? How are we going to use art to amplify our story, build our movement, our group, and win the changes that we need? Last slide. And as the Immokalee workers have taught me, that arts is essential to telling our story, moving lots of people, but combined, as I learned from watching the farm workers organizing, with brilliant organizing, we have to do the mechanics of actually building mass participation. We have to put our bodies on the line and do escalated direct action, you know, and not just in the dozens, but in the tens and hundreds of thousands. And we need a strategy. We need to outwit our opponents so we can eliminate the fossil fuel industry and other forces that will create lots more disasters to win change. I think that's my thoughts. And thank you so much for folks' attention and joining us, and all the brilliant artists and organizers on this call. It's really amazed looking at who is with us. Only sad that we're not in the streets together. Amy?
Yes, thank you so much, David. That was incredible. And I hope folks were learning a lot about all the ways we can use this art. And again, all of these resources will be available tomorrow. We will share the slide deck and all of these links. But at the very end, there's extra resources. There's the art kit, there's the wheat pasting recipe, the downloads for the art, if you want to use them digitally or you want to print posters. And then all of the wonderful links for music, the People's Echoes Facebook, their YouTube channel, SoundCloud, and then the video. And then you can grab links from this slide deck as well. And now I am going to, we have a couple minutes. So we're going to be able to take some questions. And I have pulled out the couple that I had seen in the chat. And then if you want to use the Q&A function, I've been answering questions in there as well. But the two questions, David, were, one question was, what are the best places to paste the posters to ensure you don't violate city guidelines?
I mean, that's, again, each group has to decide, but I would look at where other things are pasted. Some thought about whose property it is. I often would tend to go towards public property over somebody's household or maybe a small business. I also make choices to take some level of risk at certain points and do it directly on banks or, but that's something that each group needs to decide. And we encourage everyone to please send in your photos, whether it's an art show, signs, or wheat pasting, and then we'll share them out regularly through Stop the Money pipeline. And so some people just tape them up, some people hold them up, some people wheat paste them. So as you drive through your community in the coming days, look at your city as a possible palette, a canvas, like where would be a great place for a poster, you know, and there's ways to do it very quickly and efficiently, so it's less likely if it's someplace that's might be some risk of getting caught. You could also ask around or find out if there is a city, like I mentioned, some cities on public property, you know, this is what people used to do for 100 years anyway, don't have rules. Other cities are super uptight and you know, will get cranky. So really it's a discernment for each person. If anyone gets in big trouble, contact us and we'll see if we can provide support. And please beautify your city.
Yes, we cannot provide legal counsel, but we can refer you to friends of ours in the movement who do that kind of thing. So if you have questions, you can always hit us up at Stop the Money Pipeline. Our next question was, how long does it take to do a simple street mural? Do you ever get stopped by police before you're done?
A simple street mural, if you do a little mini practice one, you could do it in under an hour. It really depends on the city, how many people you have, what your relationship and dynamic is with the authorities. So we often do it in streets, but we have people prepared to block. We have police liaisons. Things that are less intense is you could do it on the sidewalk, and even less intense than we usually use washable, non-toxic children's tempera paint, or clay paint, but you can also just use chalk, which is upsets people who are concerned about maintaining the status quo of property less. So, and we've even done it in one community where we wanted to respect our community partners for a prayer walk who didn't want to ruffle the local authorities. So we actually primed a big canvas, laid it down in the place we wanted to be, and painted that. And you can see that in one of the New York actions that Amy showed. We decided that they weren't quite up for dealing with NYPD and painting in front of a downtown bank. So we actually prepped a mural and people painted it live directly in front of the place. So it was a little bit of a street mural. So there's a lot of variations. There's a whole kit and lots of examples, and feel free to reach out.
Definitely. And then another question was, what works better than wheat paste for textured brick, or does that work for textured brick?
It can work. And again, if it were textured brick, you might want to really get in there with your fingers and, kind of massage it in a little bit, depending on how textured it is. Yeah.
Awesome. Do you dilute your tempera paint?
I test it. Sometimes we'll often dilute it a little bit. It's very inconsistent. Cheapest way to get it is Lakeshore Learning teacher supplies that have outlets around the country. They're about half the price of Blick and other art stores, but it's a little inconsistent. So it's nice to thin it so it's quick to paint, but you don't want to thin it so much that the color is not vibrant.
Awesome. And then Austin, someone asked how do we order the newspaper posters? If we could post that link in the chat one more time. And then Rihanna asked, are there bigger versions of the posters if we want to paste those up? Rihanna, I'm gonna answer yours in the Q&A with my email address, and email me because in fact, we do have bigger posters. They're not the same designs as this. But from our last round of art, they were really big ones. It was 4 different sheets that we did really huge ones with. So I'm gonna shoot you over my email address, and David and I will hook you up with some of those bigger posters.
Those are the Defund Climate Chaos posters. You can find 6 designs by 6, couple overlaps, 6 amazing artists, and they're 3.5 by 5.5. There are 8 pages that all assemble together into one giant thing. It's not, it's a little bit more complicated. You can either pre-assemble it or you have to trim the edges. It's a little bit of a craft project, but we had 500 groups and activists do it in the spring. And we have more of those. They're available. Make a note on your form that you want those, or chat with me or Amy afterwards.
Definitely. All right. Well, that is all the questions that we had in the Q&A. Actually, okay, I see more people want some of these bigger ones. I am going to put my email in the chat. It's really easy. It's amy@stand.earth. Just shoot me over an email, and David and I will hook you up with some of those larger posters. And if you guys are in Sacramento, we can definitely, California folks, it's easy to get you art, as David is based in the Bay Area. But either way, email me and I'll get you hooked up with some of those larger posters. And for folks who are interested in doing more art, always let us know, and we're happy to meet with you one-on-one. We're happy to coach you through actions and to coach you through art and all the things that we have talked about tonight. So that brings us to the end of our time together this evening. I want to say thank you so much to Stop the Money Pipeline for the platform tonight, for us to be able to do this and to share all of this beautiful art with you. Thank you to David. Thank you to Ale for joining us tonight and teaching us your magic ways. This was absolutely stunning and amazing. And these are always my favorite trainings, is bringing art and song into our movement, because it is everything. And I just want to remind folks, you know, when things seem really dark and things seem down, and, you know, we look at the world around us and it feels like things are falling apart, what do we turn to? We always turn to our artists. We always turn to music. We always turn to art, to help us, you know, to heal our souls. So remember that when you're bringing that art and music into your actions. Sending love to everyone who is experiencing climate disasters going on today, in this past week: Puerto Rico, Cuba, Florida, Mexico, China, Alaska, up the East Coast into Nova Scotia, so many more across the globe, Pakistan, and all of our relatives experiencing climate disasters. This is what we fight for. This is why we do this, to stop this from happening to our frontline communities. So hold space for those folks tonight. And if you're interested in helping with hurricane relief or disaster relief, follow Cajun Navy on Facebook, Twitter, and any other platforms. They are a mutual aid, equitable network that gets on the ground and does rescues and things like that. So with that, thank you so much to everyone. And we'll see you next time on one of our next Stop the Money Pipeline trainings. Good night, everyone.